Again! Again!
Again and again, it keeps happening. Tomlin extends his 8-year playoff drought and leaves a lot of questions and a very bad taste in every single player, coaches, and fans' mouth. Today we're going to be breaking down the Ravens game. We have all offseason to go over who's going to get cut, who's going to get signed, who's going to get dropped, who's going to get fired. I'm not getting into any of that right now. I'm going to dial in on what happened this game, what went wrong at the end of the season that caused all of this. As painful as it may be to look through these numbers, we're gonna do it. So without further ado, let's get into the video. That first half was terrible. What happened? 300 total yards with 21 points unanswered, allowing a drive with 13 straight rushing plays and a touchdown for the first time since 2006. How does this happen on the team that we look back on being named the best defense in the NFL? Where did everything go wrong? Since when did this defense with talented players across the board become ineffective? In my previous video before the game, I had mentioned that they need to come out scoring. They needed to come out with big stops. They need to come out hitting, asserting themselves. And once again, as the broadcaster had mentioned at halftime, the Steelers looked flat. There was no fight. And he's not going to say that the Steelers didn't want to win that game, but I will. The Steelers didn't want to win that game. There was no show of life. Not even in the passing game. We'll say, oh, these big time passes to pick, and that touchdown was great, by the way. But these big time passes, right? That's great. That's a plus. Go Russ. No. Winning culture is in the demeanor in which you play the game. It's not run, pass. That's not what it is. Don't get it mistaken. Throughout the course of this game, we saw what it's like for a team to lay flat, give up, and give the game to the opposition. What we saw on Saturday night was a complete demoralization of the Pittsburgh Steelers in every regard. Over the course of the last couple of games, Steelers have been, one, unable to score on the first drive, and they've been unable to stop on the first drive. It's common knowledge as fans that the Steelers are going to come out flat, they're going to get scored on, they're not going to score, and then the defense after a couple of drives will make the adjustments, start playing better, and then the offense will come out of the half scoring. That's been a common theme for the Steelers as of late. So it's no surprise to me that that happened, but at the same time I'm shocked that it happened in the playoffs, because playoffs is a whole different game, and I know Tomlin's hearing the noise. I know he's hearing it because he says he's hearing it, and he says he's weaponizing it, except he's not. He's not weaponizing at all. As a matter of fact, he is living in his fears. He is living in his fears because he is terrified of Derrick Henry. I know for a fact Tomlin plays some sort of role in the say of the defense. It's not all Terrell Austin. Terrell Austin's gonna get most of the blame, but Tomlin's somewhat responsible for living in his fears because the game plan was clear going in that they were gonna crash down on Derrick Henry without remorse, without any adjustment, without any precaution. And when Lamar Jackson torched them on the zone read, the Steelers did nothing. Watt and Highsmith looked incapable to edge defenders. You're looking at them thinking a college football player could do better than what they're putting out on the field. But it's not the player. They know, hey, chop my feet, let me read where the ball's going and then make a play on the ball. They know that. They were told before the game, crash on Henry. That is the definition of living in your fears. You need to be able to let your guys make the plays. You need to be able to make sure your linebackers fill in the right gaps and your defensive players could hold these blocks and stop the run without literally taking your highly qualified pass rushers and make them crash down on the run every single play. Do we want to talk about living in fears? Because I could talk about Tomlin electing to punt on a 4th and 1 down 7. I could also talk about him electing to punt on a 4th and 3 down 14. That's living in your fears. And then the only time he doesn't live in his fears, get this, the only time he doesn't live in his fears is when the Ravens have the ball with 30 seconds in the second quarter. Tomlin decides to call a timeout when the Ravens are down at the 15, completely ignoring the fact that the defense hasn't been able to stop this Ravens offense. He calls the timeout in their favor. Tomlin should not have called the timeout. That backfired terribly. But we got to look at this as well, trying to be optimistic. This Ravens team's unstoppable. And it hurts to say as a Steelers fan, when you look at a play like the one where they scored to go up 21, where Lamar rolls left, steps right, steps back, steps up, dumps it over to Hill, who was in pass pro and just decided to release to score a touchdown, you can't stop that. Everybody was covered. There was a good pass rush. And that's just Lamar Jackson being a playmaker. There is also that aspect of it. I don't want to completely ignore that, but I still think the Steelers shot themselves in the foot more than once this game. It could have been closer. I didn't think they would win necessarily. It could have been closer though. But given that they did look flat that, I want to touch on a couple of things regarding that, because I am hard on them for coming out slow, for looking like they don't even want to be there, looking like they don't want to play, getting stiff-armed, ragdolled left and right. But I want to touch on the fact that the team did show tremendous grit in a certain area, because TJ Watt got hurt with an elbow, and he stayed in the game. He continued playing. Cam Hayward went into the locker room, reviewed for a concussion, came back out, kept playing, fighting. Dude was exhausted. These guys are coming out. They're fighting to be on the field. And then later it comes out that Patrick Queen had to take 4 IV fluids to play in that game because he was suffering with illness. That takes real gut. That takes real grit, determination. I'll give their praise for that, because those 3 at least, those 3 players fought their hardest and didn't give up. Although TJ Watt hasn't put up a single stat, and I don't even know how many games. I'm gonna put it up. But you need your defensive player of the year to show up in a game like this one. It was his playoff opportunity. He's been wanting it. He's been searching for it. That's been the one downside to his career. I know he wanted to turn that around, but can't fully blame down the injury. Part of it was also him. Part of it was the game plan. I think if they didn't have him crashing down every single play, he could have made more of an impact. Moving on to the second half, when I told you that the offense does terrible in the first half, makes adjustments at halftime, and then comes out looking like a completely different team, I meant that. They put up more yards in the first drive of the second half than they did in the whole first half. Why is that always a recurring theme? That's a genuine question on my behalf. Is it the coaching? Is it the players? Y'all let me know in the comments, because I don't know why that keeps happening. I couldn't tell you. My next point, Russell Wilson throwing it to Calvin Austin in triple coverage on a 4th and 15. I understand nobody was open, which is why I would say Justin Fields gave us a better chance to win that game. Fields is in, he can scramble and get those 15 easy. Easy, genuinely easily. Or he can extend the play, because that's what you got to do on a 4th and 15. If nothing's open, if your first read's not open, I'm sorry, Russ. You got to look at somebody else. You got to be able to extend the play. They call him this great extender. He's not. Russ can't extend plays for the life of him. He's moonball master and check down king. If the moonball isn't there, if his first read's not there, all of a sudden he's immediately looking at the check down, or he's immediately throwing it away. To mention that he got named player of the game is beyond me. It's beyond me, because despite the fact that I don't know who I would have named, it wouldn't have been Russell Wilson. I understand the numbers looked very, very well. Completing 20 of 29 for 270 yards with 2 touchdowns and a rating of 121. That's good, but we gotta look at it for what it is. That's what I keep saying. When we look at it for what it is, Russ either checks his first read, the deep ball. It's not there. He's looking to check down. If he's not the check down, he's looking for a 3 to 4 yard scramble. And then if it's not a 3 to 4 yard scramble, he throws it away so that it's not an interception. The yards are there because he throws those 2 deep balls. But is that really an effective offense? That's what you're settling for? No, that's not what I'm giving a digest player of the week for. I'm giving that to somebody else, because despite the numbers looking really good, the play and lack consistency thereof speaks louder than any numbers ever could. But it's more than just one player, and we saw that. I'm not gonna get caught up in the Fields Wilson talk, because it's more than that. Steelers allowed the most rushing yards in a postseason game in franchise history. Turns out that having the outside linebackers crash down on the running back every play doesn't solve all your problems, Terrell Austin. It's schematic. You need inside linebackers and interior defensive linemen to be able to take care of the ball, and then you need your outside players to contain. This is common knowledge. But it's not all Terrell. It's not all Terrell. Can't even blame the guy, because 227 rush yards allowed after contact, most by any team this season. That's not schematic. That's personality. That's grit. That's a standard. That's the new standard. That's what we've settled for. That's what we settled for opening games, and now that's what we settle for all game, apparently. Because you're playing your divisional opponent in a playoff game, and you put out a performance where you're getting stiff-armed, steamrolled, pissing down a player's leg, bulldozed, trailing 5 yards. That's player. That's not coach. The whole team performed poorly on Saturday night. And that's what makes this offseason very complicated. Because when you allow that type of yardage and you're unable to score more than 17 points in 5 games to close out the season, that takes the whole team. Because the players played poorly, the scheme was ineffective, and the adjustments weren't made quick enough. A lot of people are going to look at that stat and blame it all on Tomlin. It's partially on Tomlin. We're not taking it hard enough on the players. We think this guy's an all-pro, this guy's a pro bowler, this guy played really good for us at the beginning of the season, and just assume that the talent's there, that the will is there, and the coaching's not. But you got to look at the game. You got to look at the game and see how these players are playing, and then you'll understand it's not just Coach T. It's the players players, the schematics, the coaching. It's everyone and everything. I'm going to defend Tomlin just a little bit because he has overperformed with the quarterbacks that have been given to him. The hires, however, are his fault. From Matt Canada to Austin to Smith, those are heavily upon Tomlin. Tomlin has a big say in that, and it hasn't made the cut. I would have told you to fire Austin last year. I would have told you Smith wasn't the best hire. I mean, we all kind of felt that way when we first brought him in. We just convinced ourselves to believe that it would be better than what it was in Atlanta. People are going to be fired. If I had to guess, both coordinators. But to close up, there is a lot of concern for this team. There's a lot of concern for the coaches. There's a lot of time. It's the off season. There's a sour taste in every single person's mouth at this point. You know, you lose 5 straight. Concerning. It's ugly. Nobody wants to embrace that. Who would, right? So nevertheless, I'm going to break it all down over the course of this offseason. I'm going to go over signings, cuts, trades, fires, draft, all that. I won't be going anywhere. So just stay tuned for those videos. This is Ball Knows All. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.